Morning and welcome to the Flourish Education podcast. Today's guest is Russell Dalton. Russell has experience of being a chief operations officer in medium-sized multi-academy trusts. Russell has worked at the Diocese of Worcestershire Multi-Academy Trust and Rivers Multi-Academy Trust. So, there's a lot of change in education at the moment and school leaders are having to adapt constantly. What would you say is the main message you would like to share with school business managers and school leaders right now?
I think, my 20 years experience of being a school business leader in lots of different areas, including maintained as well as academies, is that as with everything, change is constant. And what we mustn't do is be part of the problem. We need to accept the change, we need to lead the change, and we need to embrace it. But I think the main thing about it is, that we talk about firefighting, we talk about, the interruptions to our daily life and things like that. But the more we can be visionary, the more we can look past the in-tray and look to the way education is moving, the way the environment's moving, the way our school is moving, it will help us to understand what potentially is coming next. We can't second guess everything. And actually, education is, as we've known over the last few years, is something that one minute you can have one Secretary of State who wants you to do something in a particular way, and then you get a second Secretary of Education who might slightly move the goalposts. However, we've got to accept it. We need to embrace it, and we need to aid others in that journey rather than just always think about the impact on us. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to say, that doesn't help me in my role. But I think the more that we can aid others, that will help us, because they then will take on responsibilities that maybe are impacting us on a daily basis.
Do you think then that schools have to build a change culture where they learn to pivot as these different heads of education might come in or different legislation comes in? I know from us as a recruitment business in the education sector, we've experienced the most amount of change that we've ever had in the last sort of 5 years. And I would say every year becomes scrap that plan, let's build another one sort of thing. And do you think that's a sort of similar reflection of the education sector as a whole?
Without a doubt. I mean, going back to when I first started, as a school business leader back in 2005, we all used to say then how busy we were, and we couldn't necessarily nail down what was the one thing that was actually impacting us most. And I've seen every year we talk about we're even busier than last year. And I'm not denying that. I'm really not denying that. So yes, it is about the fact that every year something new changes, something new impacts us. And yes, funding, we're going to come on to, I'm pretty sure, as we go through this, what are the big things that impacts us more now than ever before. Funding is always going to be the issue that we feel is going to be the biggest thing that impacts us. But actually, if we sit down and reflect on things, I think it is the fact that we are constantly having to move with the goalposts. We are constantly having to consider the new change or the new thing that's happening. But we are leaders and we need to be embracing that. And we need to, yes, have the better change culture, the way of easing things into it, getting people to buy into that change, all those things that won't become barriers to it, all those things that will enable it. So we need to be the masters of that. And sometimes, although we should be part of the leadership structure and the leadership team, sometimes we should be leading it ourselves rather than just as a team. So yeah, I do think that the culture that we need to embrace is one of change. We can't we can't drive into school every morning and think, right, I've got my day planned out. I know exactly what I'm going to do today. So we need to embrace that culture. We need to actually, I won't say welcome change because, we would like to have consistency, but we need to, yes, have a culture where change can be easily incorporated into our daily life.
Okay. With that in mind, school leaders are under immense pressure from so many directions at the moment, whether that's budgeting, staffing, compliance, pupil needs, parental expectations and wider sector changes. From your perspective, what are the biggest pressures leaders are facing right now?
It'd be wrong of me not to talk about budgetary constraints and also some unknowns. So, if we talk about the Rumsfeld matrix, which is the known knowns, the unknown knowns, the going through all the way to the unknown unknowns. I think that part of it is the impact of the unknown knowns. So, those are things like we know that we're going to get an element of funding, but sometimes it can be not until the very last minute where we know how much that's going to be and what that looks like. And I suppose the prime example recently is the sports premium and PE grant. That whilst it has been announced that it is going to be changing, there is going to be an element in the middle where we don't really know what's happening. And it's things like that as school business leaders or school business professionals, we have to try to second guess it. And that can be quite a strain on us because we feel that if we get that wrong, it's a reflection on us. And it really isn't. So I think that probably finance, budgets and all those will always be, if we had this podcast in 20, 30, 40, 50 years time, I would hazard a guess that one of the key things that we'd be saying as something that impacts us dramatically would be the financial constraints that we have in education.
Do you think that community helps with that then?
Yes. Yeah, I think that if we it's the old adage, isn't it? A problem shared is a problem halved. But I think if we work in silos, then we're going to always be, well, we've got nothing to compare us against, but equally nobody to discuss things with, to understand that actually this is impacting all schools, not just us. It's impacting all school business leaders, not just me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more that we can work with our peers and our colleagues in a networking type of way, it takes that pressure off. Now, I understand that actually for some people, the challenge is putting themselves in a room of like-minded people where they might then feel an element of imposter syndrome. And we really must not try to have that. And I know that's easier said than done, but if you go into a room of 100 other people, there might be 99 other people that feel that imposter syndrome. So, we all feel it, but we've got to try to get over that to aid us and aid that genuine feeling of togetherness.
Do you think that's how leaders can feel like they're carrying everything, but then using those networks to sort of spread the workload or spread the knowledge, which makes their job a bit easier?
Yeah. So I suppose one of the things that I should sort of add into this is that yes, I'm a network leader. So I run a school business leaders or school business professional network myself. And so I would definitely advocate it, but I'm not just advocating it because I'm the leader. We can't send people away with all the answers, but sometimes the relief in just thinking, it's not me that's just having this issue. It's not me that can't make the books balance. You've got that shared ownership then of, people feel that it's almost unburdening themselves of it. And the one thing I always say to people is when you come to a network meeting, yes, you're going to hear lots of people do presentations. You're going to go through lots of workshops and things like that. The main thing you really need to take away from it is talking to other people, because they are the people that are living, eating, breathing what you are doing every single day. And the more you talk, it's almost like a counselling process that it'll aid you in what you go away with.
I speak to business school leaders a lot of time. And some people really get the networking thing and have got really strong networks. But sometimes I feel that schools are almost, or school leaders are almost scared to share what they're thinking and doing in case that gives somebody, another school, sort of an advantage sort of thing. And from my experience of working in community, and I've had that same fear, it's actually not, it shouldn't be a fear, because when I leave a room with leaders in education recruitment or in recruitment, I've always felt like the problem's lifted. Do you see that as being a problem consistently, why people are not joining networks?
In one aspect, yes. I think I remember back to when I think it was a previous Labour government. One of their catchphrases was "Every child matters," and unfortunately, I think it was every at that stage it was "Every child matters," as long as they're in my school. And what we mustn't forget is truly every child does matter. So the more we share, the more we can aid every child in gaining the best that they can. So I don't think we should see this as a competitive market or anything else. It is actually, we should be aiding each other in providing the best environments for the children that are in our care every single day. So yeah, I think that best practice does not stop at the school gates. It goes much wider than that. And I think we have a duty to make sure that we are sharing what we do to aid all schools to benefit. I hear a lot, and we talk a lot in our network about really trying to get to the hard to reach schools. So those might be, I'm not saying genuinely always are, but those might be the schools that are the smallest or have the least amount of back off, and I hate the term back office, but support staff that are there to do the administrative roles within the school. So they might have less of those, and they genuinely feel that if they aren't at school, then something will go wrong, and because they're not there, they can't put that right. And I think we need to try to get over that. I do understand that, but I think we need to try to get over that for a number of reasons. First thing is, we owe ourselves that CPD, because going to a network meeting or going to a network is CPD.
Yeah.
You know, you are going to benefit from it. You are going to learn something. You are going to bring something back to your school, and you are going to develop and grow yourself. So we owe it to ourselves. Equally, the other leaders in the school owe it to you to actually allow you to go and do those things. You know, that there will be other members of those school staff that will be going away occasionally to do CPD in lots of different forms. So even if we go away for on or half a day, a term or something like that to network, it is going to bring back so much more benefit than that time we have been out of school to that environment. So I think there's a number of reasons why people don't necessarily network. You know, workload, time out of the office, feeling that things won't go right if they're away, almost feeling like that they're away and there's more pressure on other members of staff. And I think I've already mentioned about the feeling of you might be going into a room where everybody knows lots of things, and you feel that you are that person who looks down on and is not worthy of being in that environment. That's absolute rubbish. Everybody in that room is worthy of being there. So, you know, I think we need to look after ourselves with our own development as well.
When school business managers come together, what kind of conversations do you think are most valuable? Practical problem solving, sharing resources, strategic discussion, or simply having a safe space, to be honest?
I think the main thing is safe space. You know, some of those conversations that go on are ones where they can openly have a genuine conversation about concerns they have, and they know that it's not going to go any wider than the environment that they're in. So I think it's a trust level. It is definitely feeling that they're enabled to have a voice, and sometimes they don't necessarily have that voice in their school environment. And I would say that is becoming less and less, that actually the school business professional is having more of a voice in their school environment. But it only strengthens their voice by what they are learning from that CPD. And it might be that they're hearing things hot off the press that they can then be taking back to their schools and being able to implement earlier than they normally would. So I would say that it's that safe space. But I would say everything that you mentioned there is the benefit of going, so trying to be a little bit more strategic, so learning to be a strategist whilst being an operational leader as well, because the two do have to go together. So yes, you are learning that, and you might be learning it off somebody else, or you might be learning it off somebody who's doing a presentation or a workshop. So it is all those things. And it doesn't matter whether you are an experienced chief operating officer or somebody new to the role. Every time you go in there, somebody will be coming out with a nugget of information or a nugget of what they do, how they do it, that will aid you and aid your development. So, none of us, and I use this phrase so often, none of us have the monopoly of good ideas. So the more we can actually work together, the more we can gain some really good ideas that maybe we wouldn't have had before. I think the other big benefit is sharing of information and resources. And when I say resources, more probably intellectual resources than necessarily, physical resources, albeit it might be sharing of policies or things like that. But we're not always having to start with that blank piece of paper, try to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, so how can CEOs, COOs, head teachers, LEAs, multi-academy trusts and CFOs better recognise and support the value of school business managers with the wider leadership community?
Well, if I had the ballpark answer to that, I'd be probably quite a rich person, to be fair. But I think the main thing is really understanding the roles of the school business professionals. There was a recent wellbeing survey done across school business professionals, and the biggest thing that came out of that was the lack of understanding of the role. So the more that actually, and I don't think no two roles are the same. So it's understanding the role within the environment that it is, that they work within. And sometimes, even I say even I, sorry, that sounds very, very bad. But, even when I used to come home years ago, and I used to think, well, what actually have I done today? That doesn't mean I sat there and just twiddled my thumbs. It's that you can't always put your finger on what you have done because you've done so many different things in that day. But sometimes the pressures can be outside. So you can have a lot of pressures put on you at times when you're already under a great deal of stress and strain. So I think firstly, it is those other leaders really understanding what your pressures are and when you might be under greater pressure than at other times. It is understanding what motivates you and what can really help you. And it also is understanding what can really hinder you. So those are the sort of probably the key areas. I think also it is making sure that the school business professional is taken seriously and has a voice. I get very, very frustrated over a number of things with other school leaders. One is that they don't treat the school business professional, firstly, as a leader, or if they do treat them as a leader, they don't treat them as an equal leader, and they don't feel that they necessarily have as much to bring to the party with regards to all the other sides of education. And what I mean by that is that some school business professionals, if they're on leadership teams, might only be invited to a leadership team meeting if finance is a discrete thing that's on the agenda. Now, my answer to that is every single decision that is made by those the leaders has a financial implication. So to that end, even if you don't invite your school business professional for any other reason, then you should be bringing them because of the financial impact that decision will make. But they are a really good person to bring for devil's advocate reasons, for bringing a different perspective to discussions around data or how things work in the classroom. It also allows the school business professional to understand more about what does happen in a classroom or why we're making these decisions and things like that. So to actually make them a fully integrated member of the senior leadership team would enable them to do their role so much more efficiently and effectively.
I suppose it works two ways, right? It's that they're sort of on the ground, see what's going, and can sort of report to have that voice in the senior leadership, but also they can sort of take on what senior leadership are talking about with strategy to, as you say, challenge it and embed it within the schools that they're in. Yeah, massive, good point.
And you're bringing a lot of strategic knowledge potentially to that meeting that you haven't had previously. Yeah. So if we are only talking about finances, we should be looking to the future. We should be visionary with our finances. So if strategic decisions are strategy is being discussed at a senior leadership team meeting, then bring the person who actually is going to be sort of putting the numbers and the figures against that strategy in the first instance. So bring them in so they can actually highlight, well, what ifs and the so what's, all those sort of things that the school business professional could bring to the party. But yeah, it's understanding the role. It's treating them as an equal, and it is understanding what they can bring for the benefit of the whole school and for the leadership team.
One of the big challenges for school business managers is balancing the operational demands of the day-to-day with the need to think strategically. How do you manage that balance?
And that's a difficult one because, as I said, you can be driving to work and you can be trying to plan your day, and the moment you're walking through the door, something hits you that you won't achieve anything that you wanted to within that day. So I think you have to be able to think on your feet and act instinctively to things. Now, we won't all make the right decision at those times, but we have to own the decisions we make. We have to take time to think beyond the in-tray. So yes, there will be lots that impact us on a day-to-day basis, which is very operational. It is firefighting, but we mustn't become part of the problem. So sometimes, I know that we all want to be have our door always open policy, but sometimes we need to take stock of things ourselves. We need to ensure that we give ourselves time to be able to think a bit more strategic than not just operational all the time. But every single environment, the contextualization of our schools is going to dictate when, how, and all those sort of things. Now, sometimes, and my last CEO was extremely good at doing this and encouraging us to do this, was sometimes taking yourself away from the work environment. And I'm not talking about working from home necessarily and things like that, but it could be, right, I'm going to put my walking shoes on and I'm going to go out and actually walk for 20 minutes to think over things. And sometimes you can come back and that 20 minutes of just going out, being in a different environment, being in nature and all those sort of things can give you a very different perspective on things and can help you with, one, your well-being, but two, is actually you can come up with better decisions. You can think through that strategy. You might be encouraged to go out and actually walk with somebody else and be able to discuss those sort of strategy points. And whilst people might think, I haven't got the time for doing this and everything else, I would almost say you haven't got the time not to do it because it will benefit you in so many different ways. I've already spoken about a wellbeing index that's an annual ongoing basis for school business professionals, but we talk about nobody looking after our own well-being. Well, we need to look after it ourselves and we need to own that. And as part of that, we need to understand that sometimes being away from the desk for 10, 15, 20 minutes can be the biggest relief for us in a whole day. So using that time productively and thinking through something strategic or whatever. And if you want to take voice notes as you go around, as you'll see, I'm a young man myself and I'm fully engaged with technology, so I know how to do all these things. But if you want to do those sort of things, then do it because, you don't get back to the office then and think, what was that one thing that I thought about?
You can actually then translate that and put it into AI and it gives you the points that you were making in a more clearer, concise way. I'll do it myself.
Really good point talking about AI. I think AI has become part of our daily language now. And I think we've got to stop seeing it as a threat. We need to see AI as, if we engage with it well, as something that can aid us both operationally and strategic. But we have to make sure we do it in a way that works for us. We don't need to be governed by AI. We need to govern AI. But I think that can aid us in being operational and strategic. But yeah, we need to try to build a way of having time for the strategy within our working day.
The relationship between head teachers and small business managers can be really powerful when it works well. What does a strategic partnership between a head teacher and small business manager look like?
I like to think of it as that you can be a critical friend both ways. So what I mean by that is that your professional relationship should be one where you can challenge each other's ideas, challenge each other's outlook on things in a professional way, but still be able to come to that compromise at the end. I know too many relationships with school business professionals and their heads where the school business professional does not feel that they're able to voice an opinion. If they do, it will negatively impact on them. And two, where they don't feel confident enough to challenge a strong head teacher with very strong views.
What do you think you do to overcome that?
I think it is trying to use language that will help, not to be totally silent. So you've definitely got to try and have a voice, but you need to say, well, what if? And, what if we tried this? And so you sort of need to sort of go in with rather than saying, I totally disagree with that. It is, probably using language like, well, playing devil's advocate, or, if this happened, what would we do? So it's going in and sort of almost making people try to think of things from a different perspective. So, look at it from a different angle in essence, but also so I think your confidence would build so much more if you had the backing of other things. So, and again, you've got to take these things into context, but where things have worked in a different school or a different environment. So if you've got anecdotal evidence of other things, if you've got data to hand to back your point up, so you're not going in blind to things, you're going in prepared with things. And it's not going in prepared for battle. It's just making sure that if you're going to be challenged, you've got things that can help back you up. But equally, if you feel that you need to have things to help you, if you're going to go in and challenge something else, then it's not just your opinion, it is things that help you back that up. But you've got to have that professional relationship where you both trust each other, and that when you walk away from that room, that meeting, that discussion, or you don't think that behind closed doors somebody's going to say, oh my God, they were on my case again, and things like that. It's got to be that, I hate to call it this, but professional friendship, in that it is a trusted environment, and that you can be open with your views on things in a professional way.
Yeah.
I think we can blame other people for it, but sometimes we can be our own worst enemies.
Yeah, I think definitely facts. I think to back up what you're saying is the way forward, because you can't argue with those things, really. Moving on to the next question. If you could look into the future, what do you think the small business managers need to be preparing for right now?
Well, we mentioned AI, and I think AI is it's not going away. I think it's not going to take our jobs away, but what it might do is it might negatively impact us if we don't engage with it. So I think AI is here to stay, and it's going to start impacting virtually, well, it's already impacting a significant amount of areas that we work within and that we have to engage with. Parental complaints now a lot more are AI based. So we've got to embrace new technology. We've got to embrace change. We have got to be a master of our own destiny. Now, I'm talking about us as an individual rather than us as a collective environment in school. Yes, we are part of that, but I think the biggest thing is we need to focus on us and how we can move ourselves forward. We started with change is constant, and change is constant, and there will be significant change over the next 12 months. There will be even more significant change the 12 months afterwards. And that will go on forever and ever and a day. So we have got to embrace that change. We have got to be able to lead that change. We've got to understand, that we're going to have another prime minister in the not too distant future, which will bring another set of ministers and secretary of states where things will be different for us. So we have got to try to get as well informed up front of what that could mean for our schools, for us as individuals. But real crystal ball gazing is, we have got to be a lot more strategic and look at the environments that we're in to move with how nature is taking us. We're sat here on a very warm day today, and we've got, by the end of this week, we're going to be in the Midlands in very hot schools and trying to make sure that we are making it as safe and as a gooder environment as we can for good education to move on. So let's not sit on our backsides and just wait for somebody to come up with the answers. We need to start thinking about how we can make those changes now, because it's only going to, I'm not going to say get worse, because, some of us embrace these conditions, but it is only going to increase in those environments. So start thinking more outside the box. Don't be like I was when I first started, of being regimented and thinking, right, today I'm going to do this, tomorrow I'm going to do that. So have a very flexible approach to our roles, but continue the journey on our individual development, because if we sit in our silo, we will only get the same outcomes. We will never get improved outcomes. So start thinking about what new things, what different things can we adapt, bring in to actually improve the outcomes that we want and our school environments want.
Just to note on that, in the years I've been working in education, I've never known it where schools have closed down because of the weather being too hot. So you can see the change. Yes, we've had snow days before, but now it seems that we have sun days. You can see that it's all.
See now, I can remember back to 1976. I know I don't look old enough. I was in school in 1976. Now we were probably very fortunate then that the majority of the heat hit over the summer holidays.
Yeah.
But I can remember our school day changed. So we went in when it was forecast to be exceptionally hot. Whilst we might not have had time away from school, we went in earlier and finished earlier. So it still impacted our parents.
Yeah.
But by how. So it is now thinking, how do we adapt? How do we do things differently? We had to adapt dramatically when the pandemic hit us. So what lessons did we learn from that we can start incorporating now into our daily life within our school?
How do business managers stay confident in their decisions when things are changing constantly? How do school business managers stay confident in their decision and strategy when things are changing so constantly?
I think we've got to have self-confidence. I think, as I said earlier, we've got to own our decisions. So not every decision we make will be the right decision. but it might be the right decision at that time. If something goes wrong from the decision we've made, then we have got to take ownership, and we then need to look at adapting things from the decision we make. I'm ex-military, and this was something that was ingrained in us, that we had to be decision makers, and that sometimes those decisions could have catastrophic outcomes from, but we couldn't just bury our head. We had to then regroup and move on. So I think own our decisions, be confident in what we do, but also be able to adapt when the need arises. So yes, we might be in an environment now where we are uncomfortable. We've not had to cope with these things previously. But if we just bury our head, then we're not doing what our role states we should be doing, which is making the environment safe for everybody within that school. So I can remember the first snow day I had when I was a school business manager, the head teacher ringing me up and saying, "What should we do?" And I'm thinking, hang on, you're the head teacher. You should be making the decision here. But he was right. We needed a collective decision, and sometimes we don't need to knee-jerk, but equally, we have to realize you're going to be damned if you do, damned if you don't. So you're always going to have critics, no matter what decision you make. But if you make it for the right reasons, i.e. safety, or we're not just going to go on blindly because we need to educate our children. Sometimes education can be done in lots of different ways, and it's also making children understand that decisions have consequences. So, we need to all understand that. And sometimes it can be, yes, we've decided to close, but if we didn't close, this could have been the consequence.
With school business managers are getting extra pressure from areas like sports, premium, finance updates and compliance. How do they stop themselves becoming overwhelmed with the extra pressure that's on them at the moment?
I think we've got to see things. Got to see, like, for instance, budgets as an iterative process. And what I mean by that is, it's not just we start a budget planning process in January, and our new budget starts either April or September. So we need to help ourselves with seeing things as sometimes iterative. So, for instance, using budgets as an example, budget planning for your next year starts September of this year. So, it is because we know our funding is lagged. So we know on the first day we have children in September, okay, roughly this is the amount of children that we are going to be funded on for next year. And those are going to be funded for lots of different things. So yes, for our ORPU, but we think they need to think about, premium, all these different things. But that starts in September. It doesn't start in January. It starts in September. And it needs to be, that right, okay, let's start this process now to take the pressure off at a later date. And that can be with everything. So if we discuss things like the sports premium, for instance, and think, okay, we've got it this year. So we can start thinking in September. So we're trying to build our assumptions up here. What do people think is going to happen potentially with sports premium next year? And we start having that conversation with other people. So that can be then, okay, we're making an informed decision now. Either we're going to say we're going to get it or we're not. So if we make that decision, right, as an assumption, we feel that we're not going to get sports premium next year, and we did make that decision early, we start thinking, okay, if we're not going to get the income, we're not going to get the expenditure, or we're not going to make the expenditure on it. So we take those two things out, and we do that at an early point, and we put that down as an assumption. Now, we might want to take that as an assumption to our leaders, governors, our trustees early, and for them to agree that. The more we can do things earlier, then the more that it will help us as we go through the process. So I'm not saying this is a perfect model, but we should almost seamlessly oh, I'm going to be so criticised for this comment, but seamlessly be going from one year to the next with our budgets. But the way we would do that is start early each and look, have a strategic vision. So we know in 3 years' time, we're going to potentially have these amount of pupils and so on and so forth, but change things as we go along. So we're not sort of panicking at the last minute. Well, now I've got to sit down and do my budget, but I've got a hot day today and I've got to deal with this, and we've got sports day and we've got all these different impacts. Start doing things more as an iterative process rather than, well, I'm not going to start things until this date sort of thing. So start seeing things as a rolling process. Budgets is a good example, but health and safety can be another one. You can build it into your daily existence in a school environment, is make things more iterative moving through.
We talked about imposter syndrome and how it can affect people in leadership roles, especially when they feel they should already have all the answers. What would you say to a school business manager who sometimes feels out to the...
I think that most schools business professionals would be lying if they said they didn't suffer with an element of imposter syndrome at some stage in their career, their daily life, going to meetings and things like that. And it's very easy just to say, you shouldn't feel that way, you should get over it, and things like that. I'll use an example that when I first became a school business manager 20 plus years ago, the one of the criteria was that you had to have a degree. Now, I didn't have a degree, but I was mature enough to say I had enough leadership experience in the elements of the school business professional life that a degree was just a qualification. I actually brought the experience to those roles. But what that meant was, I always had it in the back of my mind that when I went to that senior leadership team meeting, I was the only one that didn't have a degree. So I was putting that pressure on myself with imposter syndrome myself, thinking I'm not worthy of sitting here because I am with very educated people. And whilst I had got the working experience behind me, I might not have the certificates that back that up. So I do understand that people suffer from it because it happened to me. And people will say, "Oh, you're far too self-confident for ever to impact it on you." Self-confidence is actually can just be an act. It can just be, I've got a uniform on or I've got a costume on that actually makes me self-confident or makes me act self-confident. So sometimes we need to act that way and it will make us feel more confident in that environment. And sometimes it is just about biting the bullet and thinking, I am going to go into that room because I know, and I've mentored people who've said, I just don't feel that I would live up to expectations if I went in a room with other school business managers. I feel that I would be found out. Well, I'm giving this message out to you all now. I haven't been found out yet in 20 plus years. So I'm pretty sure in one meeting, you will not be found out. And there is nothing to find out about you. So just try to have some initial courage to walk in through the door. Have some initial courage for your voice to be heard. Have things help you. So even if it is you've got the backing of information or you're going with questions that you want answered to aid you. So all these things will help you with, I'm not going to say overcoming imposter syndrome, because I don't think we ever actually overcome it. It's always going to be there with us at some stages of our lives and careers. I go into conferences and hear people talk and I'm thinking, my goodness, they are far above my knowledge, experience and everything else. Sometimes people can be bluster. Sometimes people can know some words to say, and sometimes it sounds like they've swallowed a thesaurus or a dictionary or something like that. I'm a bit more of a plain speaker myself, but don't let what others say or what others do actually have a negative impact on your self-confidence. Have belief in yourself, because if you believe in yourself, then other people will start believing in you too.
Do you think that CPD, peer learning, professional reflection can help school business managers feel more confident and prepared.
Without a doubt, it is you have to invest in your own CPD.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to do that for you. You have got to insist on you gaining that professional development. And professional development isn't always about going on courses. It isn't always about getting a certificate. Sometimes just professional conversations. It can be things like when you're driving into work in the morning, listening to a podcast, or, it could be watching a reel that is a 5-minute reel, but can be very informative and help you with understanding certain things. It is investing time in those things because you will get so much back from it and you will be more effective, more efficient and more knowledgeable in your role. So definitely you have got to invest in that yourself. You have got to look after number one when it comes to professional development. I think in addition to that, if you don't, you will go backwards. Change is happening every day. So you need to be at least moving with the times, if not trying to get yourself ahead of the times. So really do that. Have a voice, learn, which is, and I say this quite often when I do leadership training and things like that. Learn when you are in an environment where it might be leadership discussions are going on. Learn where that seat of power is. It might be that actually it benefits you sometimes from sitting in that actual seat of power and you leading the conversation. Because don't forget, you have significant things to bring to the party. So have self-confidence in what you are bringing, but make sure you are bringing things that can be backed up, with certain things. And collective ownership is the biggest one. So budgets aren't your sole responsibility. It is a collective responsibility. Health and safety is not your sole responsibility. It is a collective responsibility. So let's not be our own worst enemies. Let's not be control freaks. Let's make sure that we share. Let's make sure we include others, and let's take everybody on the journey together with us.
Brilliant. I wanted to move on to wellbeing, resilience, and look after yourself. School managers, they're often focused on looking after the school, the staff, the systems, but it can be easy to forget their own well-being. Why is it important to make sure that school business managers make time to look after themselves too?
Yeah, I think most school business managers, school business leaders, school business professionals, whatever your role is, will find that they are potentially the safe place. So they are the place where lots of other members of staff will go to unload. So, and unloading is actually a way of de-stressing. But what you don't really always recognize is unloading is actually providing more stress to somebody who might already be stressed. So if you are encouraging people by saying my door is always open, and I'm not saying that we should turn people away or anything like that, but if you are encouraging people to come and unload their stresses on you, then that is adding to your bucket. So you are a sponge at the end of the day, and regardless of how little that stress might be that other people are unloading on you, you are still taking an element of that on. And that will be impacting on you because, one, it is impacting on your time, somebody coming and doing that. And you might be in the middle of something major that you need to deal with. You will put that down to deal with them, and then you will come back to it. So you are doubly stressed now because you've taken on some of their stress, and you're stressed because you've had impact on what you were doing at that time. So you have got to find what you need to do to help unload some of that bucket. Now, I talked earlier about, that taking time to go out for a walk because you can think strategically. That can have the double whammy. So that can be, and this is proven medically, if you go out and just take, it doesn't have to be a long period of time. So, just going to take a walk for 15, 20 minutes. If you get outside in nature, it can help you with your well-being, your stress load and things like that. Now, I'm no expert in this, but I know it's helped me and I know it's helped significantly other people with it. I think it's also...
Do you think it's sort of practical steps like diet and exercise? And I think those things help.
You can, so all those things can help you, but I think it is a case of not bottling things up. So if you are feeling overwhelmed with workload, with just general stress, and it can be, don't forget we can have things in our personal life that is impacting us significantly. We need to feel safe to be able to just tell other people, I'm not in a good place at the moment, so I need you to understand that I need some assistance. And that assistance can just be understanding. It doesn't necessarily mean I need you to take on stuff, but all those things could help. But you need to have that ability to and feel able to say to people safely, I just need you to understand how I'm feeling at this moment in time. Now, that could be your head teacher. It could be another colleague. It doesn't have to be a senior colleague. It just needs, sometimes you have the ability that you can offload verbally about how you are feeling. And sometimes it might be, just don't tell that tree. Go out in nature, find a tree that you like to talk to, and you've unloaded. But you've got to find your ways of being able to, again, invest in you. But I go back to, let's not be our own worst enemy and thinking that we are some sort of super person, that we are never going to be impacted by stresses, by strains and things like that. We all will. I don't mind admitting that I had a significant wobble in the middle of lockdown, and I thought I was a very strong character and everything else, that those things wouldn't impact me. It did, but I had the courage to actually speak to people about the way I was feeling, and it really helped me. So yeah, don't be afraid to talk. Don't be afraid to sometimes just say, my door's not open at this time. I've got to focus on things that I need to get done. And if it means taking yourself to a different environment, I'm not saying always at home, but a different environment in school or somewhere else where you can sit down quietly and get on with things that really need to be get on with without being impacted, then do it. Don't be afraid to do it.
Brilliant. When we're looking at a whole school culture and well-being, how do we ensure that it's not just spoken about, but generally built into the way leaders and teams work together? Well,
they say that you've got to lead from the front, haven't you? So if we are going to take well-being seriously in our schools or our environment, then we need to look at what is impacting everybody, not just a certain part of that school community, but everybody, and how can help them in their environment. So we need to understand what are the things that impact. We need to understand what can benefit. We can't make everything right, and I think that sometimes needs to be understood. We hear what you're saying, but we can't move heaven and earth always to stop those things impacting. But listening is one area, and that might sound now like I have contradicted myself. But what I mean by listening is we might come up what we feel is the best well-being strategy for our schools, but we've done it in isolation without listening to what other people are saying. We might be saying to people, we are going to incorporate 15 minutes of yoga into everybody's daily life. Well, some people might find it stressful doing yoga, so we need to listen to individuals. I'm going to say it again, we don't have the monopoly on good ideas, but we need to lead from the front. So if we are saying that we believe that people should, take a 15-minute walk a day, then visibly people should see us doing it. But some people might not be able to do it. So teachers in the classroom might find it really difficult to find the time to do it. So yes, we need to not write a policy and procedure just for the sake of doing it. We need to write something that will have a positive impact, that where we've listened, where we might need to review, and that we can embed. It's a bit like visions and values. Sometimes we do it because we're told we have to do it, and we don't necessarily embed them in our schools and establishments we work in. So make sure we can embed it. And don't forget, it's not just about the staff. It's about every stakeholder in our school, and we mustn't remember the pupils in this. Is we need to consider their well-being as well as our employees.
Absolutely. I just wanted to move on to some more practical advice for school business managers. So what are the 3 practical things school business managers could do this term to feel more supported, more strategic, or just more in control?
Now, obviously this term we're coming to the end of this term. So I think the biggest one is take time for yourself as we come to the end of this term. Reflect on the journey that you have done over the last year, or however long you've been. If you've not been within your environment for an academic year, then reflect on how far your school has moved and what you have done over the time you've been in that school, or just over the last academic year, or a shorter period of time. So reflect on that journey, because I don't think we do enough reflection. I don't think that we kick ourselves about a lot of things. So we don't learn from the past. So we might make the same mistakes again in the future, or we might not necessarily learn what we did well and put that in place for the future. So reflect on the what went well and even better if element.
Yeah, you mentioned about imposter syndrome as well. I think when you reflect over the year, you see what you have achieved. So then setting goals for the next year, you sort of a realization that actually, you did that, and you can move it on, achieve great things. So I think reflection is always a really good tool.
So that's sort of one area. I think the other one is try to learn some self-confidence and to have that voice. So I think it is with that reflection, where could you have been better at using your voice, and what could that have brought? And then the final one for me is going back to the old comment of, we don't have the monopoly of good ideas. So what questions could we be asking going forward that will aid us in our roles and the decisions we make?
Okay. I love that saying, by the way. We don't have the monopoly of good ideas. That's amazing. What advice would you give school business managers who want to build stronger relationships with their head teacher, senior leaders of the team, or wider net?
I think if we might be approachable to a lot of other members of staff. So we need to adapt our approach to other senior leaders, because we need them to take us seriously. So adapt our approach. For one, make sure that they see us as a human being. So, I think we have a lot to deal with, but equally we are a human being. So, we're not machines. So act human and take ownership of what we do, but also make sure that we see it as a team effort rather than it's our responsibility. So I think the more that we can embed ourselves, we will be welcomed. And sometimes it's not always being that yes I can do, because if we're looking at reducing staffing in schools, sometimes the burden is always put on our shoulders of who's going to take on these roles and responsibilities. But it is sometimes looking at the answers to problems and coming up with some solutions. So, don't be the problem, be the solution is probably the biggest one. I always liked that if somebody came to me with a problem who maybe they wanted us to come up with the solution to, or me to come up with the solution to, I used to sort of say to them, what do you think the solution to this problem might be? Because then it is making them take ownership of things. So I think then we need to bring that to other leaders as well. So say, hang on a moment, have we thought about this as being a solution to something? And it brings a different perspective to things. So I think we can be sometimes that sense of, I remember back when I had my very first interview for being a school business manager, and I was asked I had a big board of people that were interviewing me, and this deputy head said to me, this role is the only member, and I'll use the words he used, so I don't necessarily agree with these words, the only member of the non-teaching staff that will be on the senior leadership team. What do you think you will bring to the party? And without thinking, I responded with a sense of the real world. Then I thought, I've said totally the wrong thing here, because all I could see was all these teachers thinking, what? So I actually said, right, to clarify what I mean by that is, I presume that most of you have only ever known education. I.e., you've been in schools, you've been in sixth forms, you've been in university, and then you've come back to schools. I'm bringing a perspective of an outsider from schools, that yes, I was a student in a school, but then I've been away for a long period of time and done lots of other things, and I'm bringing back into that perspective. So be that new perspective bringer, and then you potentially will get taken a lot more seriously in those conversations.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And just on the final takeaway, we've got 2 points. So if listeners only took one message from this episode, what would you want it to be?
Be true to yourself and believe in yourself. I know that's two.
Yes, that's okay. That's all right.
I think have that self-belief, and then others will start believing in you as well.
Yeah, I think that's a strong message. What do you think school business managers need to hear more often about the value they bring to school?
Well, I think it is literally that. I think it is that they need to hear more often that they do bring value. You know, let's face it, without the school business professional in a school, who would be doing all of those roles? We totally underestimate the number of facets that a school business professional has to take on. And that's even if that school business professional is a specialist and not a generalist. They will be still taking on lots of different facets than potentially other leaders within that school. So, you know, I think that they need to sort of really understand. I'm not saying that the school would fall down around them if they weren't there, but the sense of the power that they bring to that school environment and the difference that they make. And I think they don't always see it because they're not in the classroom. They're not seeing the way that children are brought on. But without the school business professional being able to ensure that there are those resources, ensuring that the school is a safe environment, ensuring that it is a pleasant environment to teach and learn in, all of those sort of things that a school business manager, a school business professional brings is a massive positive impact to the school environment.
And not forgetting the pace of change that the sector is facing at the moment. I think if school business managers weren't there, would schools be able to adapt so quickly? I just don't see them so, but I think there's a real value with school business managers. So yeah, thank you very much for today, Russell. That's been really informative. I hope the listeners enjoyed it. So thanks for us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.